sports fans, sports collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to the Card King Sports and Variety Show. I'm your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com. Your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. On the telephone line, I welcome to the program one of the original 1962 New York Met sluggers. We welcome in the great Frank Thomas. Frank, Brian C., it's an honor to speak with you today.
It's good to be here, be there.
Yeah, Frank, I read baseball was always your first love. Can you take us back to your roots in sports?
Well, when I was 5 years old, my Uncle Mike used to catch ball with me, and I said that this is what I want to do when I grow up. And I said that I want to become a Major League Baseball player. And during the time when I was in grade school, one of the priests that I knew, took me up to Mount Carmel College up in Niagara Falls, Ontario for the summer. And he said, maybe you want to become a priest. Well, I went up there, and then I went to the Carmelite monastery for 4.5 years, and I was in my novitiate, and then I says, no, this isn't what I want to do. And I talked to the priest, and I says that I want to go home, and I want to become a Major League ball player. And it was almost like a miracle because I only played 41 games of sandlot baseball. My 42nd game was in professional baseball. So it was in the books for me to do what I really wanted to do since I was 5 years old.
Wow. Now let's talk about your career as a Pirate. In 1953, Frank, you set a record as a rookie hitting 30 home runs, which set a club record. And I believe the great Ralph Kiner was on that team. So you really turned heads as a rookie slugger back then, would you say?
Oh, yeah. No, that record still stands, Brian.
It does, right?
Right.
How was it getting into the Pirates? Did they welcome you? Take us back, if you can, to the early 50s.
Well, what question do you want to ask me?
Yeah, did the ball club take you in well? Did you get along with all the players?
Yeah, no problem at all. In other words, when they sold Ralph Kiner to Cleveland, traded him to Cleveland, that's when I got my real chance to play. And I can remember Fred Haney, who was the manager at that time. Well, Billy Meyer was the manager then. But, and it all started out that when Fred Haney became manager, okay, he said to Ricky, he says, we take this kid to spring training every year. He hits 10 or 11 home runs in spring training. We bring him north and we don't play him. He says, I want to see what this kid can really do. And he put his arm around me and he says, you're my center fielder. I want to see what you're going to do. And it was like taking the blanket off you and sending you out to pasture. And if I didn't make it, and if I didn't do it myself, it was on my own fault. And it ended up when I hit the 30 home runs and had a great year. And that's where it all started.
Now, I've also read a lot about your career. I read that you gave Jim Hickman some advice regarding how to talk to reporters. Can you talk a little bit about that?
What was that again?
I read about your career, about giving Jim Hickman, a young Jim Hickman, some advice regarding handling reporters. Can you talk a little bit about the advice you gave Jim Hickman?
Well, the best way to handle reporters is tell them the truth. And a lot of times back in my time, I knew the ones that I could talk to, and the ones that wouldn't say anything, that would keep the thing off the record. But there were some back then, and there's more so now, that when they interview somebody, they twist things around to make a name for themselves, and I think that's wrong. But as long as you tell the truth in your own mind, you have nothing to worry about.
Frank, what was your relationship with Casey Stengel? Was he really the professor? Did he know his baseball? Was he difficult to work with? Can you give us a little bit of experience with Casey Stengel?
Well, to be honest with you, I always looked at it this way. Casey probably forgot more baseball than I'll ever know. And, when I played for him, I was in the outfield all the time, okay? So some of his antics that he pulled on the bench, I wasn't there, okay, to hear all this stuff. And, and to read some of the things that he said, kind of baffled my mind in that respect. I can remember only one thing that he did. We were playing a ball club, and we had men on first and second, and I'm sitting next to him at this time, and I says, Casey, Solly's looking for a sign from you. He says, probably they want, Holly wants me to bunt, but he says, we're going to pull the surprise. We're not going to bunt. We're not going to bunt this time. We're going to swing away. That's the only time that I knew of anything that he said. But except for when he would talk to a ball player in front of a writer, I'll give you an example. Jim Hickman, who was a heck of a ball player, who was my roommate at the time, and Casey thought that he could be a better ball player than what he showed, okay? And he talked to the writers the same as I'm talking to you right now, so that the ball player would hear it along with the writer, okay, because it was close to Jim's locker. And this kind of frustrated Jim to no end, and it kind of took him back a step. And then once he got traded, and a good example is he went to the Cubs and he ended up hitting some 30, 35 home runs.
Wow. Now, around 62, Frank, Rogers Hornsby was your hitting coach with the Mets.
Yes.
Can you share any insights on what the great Hornsby told you, his approach to hitting?
Well, let me go back one step further, Brian. When I first started baseball, my first manager at Tallahassee, Florida, was Jack Rossrock from the Gas House Gang. And he put his arm around me in spring training, and he says, I want to tell you one thing, Frank. He says, you can't get to the major leagues walking, so swing the bat. And every other coach, I used to pick Roger Hornsby, Ted Williams, Stan Musial, Paul Waiter. I used to sit and talk to these people and pick their brains, and every one of them say the same thing. Swing the bat, because if you swing the bat and put the ball in play, you always have a chance to do something. The ball could take a bad hop, could hit somebody in the neck, okay? It could go a different way. It could become an error. It could be a throwing error. And this I believed in, and I never struck out 100 times in a season either, because they put the ball in play.
Right. So did he tell you how to study a picture? To study a pitcher, what to look for?
Well, I never look for anything but a fastball, Brian, because I can always adjust to any other pitch. But if I'm looking for a fastball, okay, they throw me a curveball, that's fine, because I can adjust to that. But if I'm looking for a curveball and they throw a fastball, I'm in the hospital.
Well, I tell you, I also heard that one of the toughest pitchers you ever faced was Don Drysdale. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. I struck out 41 times in my career against him. He's the only pitcher that had that. He was a great pitcher, okay? And the reason why he was a great pitcher, his ball came in to a right-hander. It really bore into him. It started out at the middle of the plate. You think it was going to be over the middle of the plate, and it breaks in at the last minute, and then you hit it on the trademark, okay? And you break your bat, okay? I got my hits and home runs off of him, but still, I struck out more against him than any other pitcher in the National League.
Really? How was it facing Sandy Koufax? Difficult?
No problem with Koufax.
Really? Just Drysdale, huh?
I did. Drysdale was the toughest pitcher for me in all of baseball.
Wow. I mean, you had a lot of great accomplishments, Frank, but I would say one of the best accomplishments was making it to the All-Star team in 1958. You must have been very proud of that, Frank.
Well, I relished that All-Star game more than the other two, and the reason for that, Brian, is because the players picked the team, okay? And players will always pick the person who was having a great year at that particular time, and that's why I relish it. You know, the other times, you know, the ballot box is stuffed with different cities and stuff like that. It's you know, it's a popularity contest in that respect, but when the ball players vote, they vote because the player deserves it because of the type of year that he's having.
Right, and in 1962, you set the New York Mets all-time home run record in a season, right? 34 home runs.
Right, that stood for 17 years.
17 years, so you must have enjoyed playing at that Polo Grounds.
Polo Grounds was a great ballpark for me. Although, you know, in 62, I had 18 home runs in the Polo Grounds, and I had 18 home runs on the road. So,
right,
you know, you should hit more home runs in your home park. Now, take Pittsburgh. Okay, when I hit 35 home runs in 58, I had 26 on the road and 9 in Forest Field. That's the difference.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at your stats, Frank, you finish your career with a .266 batting average, with 1,671 hits, 262 doubles, 286 home runs, 792 runs, and 962 RBIs. I mean, that's not too shabby.
Well, when I first started, Brian, I set a goal for myself. I said I wanted to hit 300 in the major leagues. I wanted to hit 300 home runs, okay, and I wanted to drive in 1,000 runs. Now, because I had the bad year in 1959 with a bad hand, okay, which no one believed me, you're going to laugh, but I had a gynecologist operate on my thumb, all right? So if I would have had that good year in 59, I would have reached my plateau, my goal that I just set out for myself.
Yeah, now I'm going to go back a little bit, Frank. Also in 1948, you also led the Georgia-Florida League. That was really your first pro year with 132 RBIs, and you led the Southern League in runs, home runs, and RBIs in 52.
Right. I was
right,
testing,
and then
Brian. Like I told you, the good Lord's been good to me. Okay? And when I left the seminary, I thanked him because he told me that this was what I was going to be. And I believed it, and I went after it. I worked hard for it, and it paid off.
Frank, let's talk a little bit about your charities. I know you're involved with charities. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. This all started when I was invited to a charity golf tournament by Jim Kelly, the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, down in Charleston, South Carolina. And while I was there, the people who were in charge asked if some of us would go to the hospital to visit kids who were dying of cancer. So Dempsey, the Center for Buffalo, and myself said, sure, we'd be more than happy to do this. So we went to the hospital. The first room we went into was a 17-year-old boy. And the lady in charge says, you just got back from Disney. What did you like best about Disney? He said, we like the girls, okay, which is understandable, but he's on his deathbed, okay, at 17 dying. And he said, would you go down the hall and talk to a little girl about 4 years old? So Dempsey and I went down. I poked my head in. The little girl was cutting out the little dolls on paper that these little girls used to do. And I looked at her and I said, you're doing that so when your mother comes, you'll be able to show her what you've been doing. And she looked up at me and she says, Mr. Thomas, my mother can't come. She has to stay home with the kids. It brought tears to my eyes. And I said to the lady in charge, I turned around to her and I said, from now on, I'm going to be charging a fee for my autograph, and you're going to get the results. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I sell my pictures, okay, and all the money goes to these two charities that I have, which are Camp Happy Days, Kids Kicking Cancer, and the other one is Courageous Kids, a safe haven for children with cancer. And both of them are in Charleston, South Carolina. People say, why Charleston? Because that's where it started, where I went to these kids. I played a softball game with them. I helped them swing the bat, picked them up, carried them around my shoulders, around the bases, big smiles on their faces, and that's what made it all worthwhile. Because Brian, my wife and I had 8 children, 7 living and 1 deceased, all healthy except for the tragic accident in 1974. And I said that the good Lord has me on this earth to do something, and I'm going to give back something to baseball, which he gave to me. And that's how it all started.
Well, it's definitely a great cause. I mean, if the audience listening wants to reach out to you, how can they do that, Frank?
Well, they can write to me at 4202 Lenox, that's Lenox, Oval, 2 words, Pittsburgh, PA, 15237-1659. If you want to call me, I'll give you my number. It's 1-412-848-4302.
And with a donation, you'll send them an autographed picture, right?
In other words, the picture sells for $22, and it includes the postage, the envelope, the inscription I write on the card, and my true, authentic signature. It's an 8x10. You got one, didn't you, Brian?
No, not yet. But off air, we can talk. I can get your information again.
Right.
So speaking about autographs, Frank, let me ask you, what do you think about this baseball card and sports memorabilia hobby?
Well, to be honest with you, Brian, the only cards that are worth anything today are the vintage cards, because they've saturated the market with the other ones. I mean, I had complete sets from 1952 all the way to 2014 from both the National and American League, okay? And when I moved from my 5-bedroom home to where I'm at right now into a condo, downsizing, I didn't have room for anything, okay? So I said to the kids, you want to take the cards? There it is, they're yours. And that's what I had to do with mine. So, it's a good hobby. It's a clean hobby, okay? I'm still getting bubblegum cards for me to autograph, and I'm out of baseball now 55 years, and I'm getting anywhere from 5 to 10 letters per week.
Yeah, and I'm a big vintage card collector, and one of the two of your toughest cards for collectors listening to find is your 1963 Post serial card, Frank. It was produced in limited quantity, so your 63 Post serial card number 196 is very difficult to get, and also your 63 Topps card number 495. Those 2 cards of yours were issued in limited supply, and they're very scarce, and they're very popular in the hobby. So it's really nice to see that your fans still are out there collecting your items.
Well, how this how this goes, Brian. Let me explain this to you. Mothers and dads go to take the kids to the ballpark, like when I was with the Mets. Let's give you an example, okay? Now, those kids are married, all right? And their kids are sending me for cards, And then once those kids get married, it's like a round robin, okay? It just continues down the line if they are true baseball fans. And the beautiful letters that I'm getting from people, it's well worthwhile for me. It gives me an opportunity to write a letter to each and every one that sends for my autograph. I do it all handwritten. No typewritten. I don't have a computer, okay? I write a letter to everybody that does that because I vowed when I went into baseball that when I make the major leagues, not if I make the major leagues, but when I make the major leagues, I will never refuse to sign a kid's autograph. And I did that religiously when I would come out of the clubhouse in every ballpark. As long as they would stand in line, I would stay there and sign every one card that the kids put in front of me, okay? And the reason why I had them all sign up is because when they crowded around you and threw the pen at you, ink goes all over your clothes. So I didn't want that to happen. So if somebody would try to crack the line, I would say, go to the end of the line. I'll stay here until everybody is signed. There were times when my wife sat in the car for 2 hours in Pittsburgh before I finished signing the cards for everybody.
Now, Frank, how did it work when you were playing? Did like the Topps company come to the baseball field and take pictures of all the players? Do you recall that happening?
Yeah. In other words, my first year in major leagues, they would come. They would give you a gift, either $125 or you could take some merchandise. And I always felt that the money, you spend the money and it's gone. Let's take something to remember what Topps have done for us. And I took the outside furniture.
You did?
Yes.
And also, Frank, what with this horrific virus going on, what do you think of baseball? You think it'll be back?
That's hard to say, and it's going to be if they're going to play with empty seats, okay. Yeah, it'll be just like you're playing sandlot baseball. You can have a lot of fun, all right. And they're talking about playing it out in the West Coast and Arizona, and I don't know, but I understand why they're trying to do that because for a simple reason, they got the big TV rights and the money's there. And so that's going to have to pay the players that they're already signed. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. But we're all in this crisis, and I haven't been out of the house since this all started because of my age.
Yeah. And how old are you now, Frank?
I will be 91 in 3 months.
Wow. I mean, you sound great. You sound vibrant. You sound strong. God bless you.
I feel very, very great and very, very fortunate. And I think this is why the good Lord wants me on this earth to help these kids.
Well, again, you're doing a great cause, Frank. My final question to you, like you mentioned, you've been retired now for decades. Do you ever get that impulse to be on the field at your age? You ever get that impulse? You missed the game?
Well, somebody asked me not too long ago. They said, if you were playing today, what do you think you would hit? And I just thought for a minute, and I said, maybe about 285. And he says, only 285? I says, heck, I says, I'm 90 years old.
Well, God bless, Frank, and take care of yourself, all right? Stay safe. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, I appreciate it, Brian. It's nice that you've asked me, and it's always nice to talk baseball to people who love baseball. I love baseball.
Absolutely. And Frank, one more time, can you just mention your address again for our listeners listening, that if they want to send you a donation for your wonderful charities?
Okay, it's 4202 Lenox, Lenox Oval, 2 words, Pittsburgh, PA, 15237-1659. And if they want to call me and talk baseball with me, that's okay. 1-412-848-4302. And I'd appreciate any help that you can give me for these kids because it's a great cause.
Frank, thank you so much. We'll speak soon, okay? Thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous.
Okay, Brian. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Take care of yourself. Happy birthday.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That was one of the original 1962 New York Met players, Frank Thomas, and really a great career. A great slugger, a pull hitter, Frank. Polo Grounds was the field that was really meant for him. I mean, Frank had a good season with the Mets in '62. He played his best ball for the Pirates from 1951 to 58, hitting .275 with the Pirates with 163 homers in 925 games. And in 9 out of 10 of the seasons, he hit 20 or more home runs in his first 9 out of his first 10 seasons. He hit 20 or more home runs. And as we mentioned here, was selected as third baseman in the All-Star game in 1958. And as I mentioned also, Frank was a slugger. He led the Georgia-Florida League in 48 with 132 RBIs and led the Southern League in runs, home runs, and RBIs in 1952. So we just had on one of the original Mets from 1962, the great Frank Thomas, and I appreciate his time. I appreciate what he does for his charities, and thanks for being on the program. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I hope everyone's staying safe. And until next week, happy collecting to all.